my experience, there is no more grateful person than an unhoused person that has shelter that night.
Welcome to St. Patrick's Center's More Than a Soup Kitchen podcast. On today's episode, we will be speaking with Ramona Curtis, Executive Director of Unhoused STL. Ramona, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in. For those that do not know, can you explain what is Unhoused STL?
Unhoused STL is a grassroots, all-volunteer, 100% community-funded nonprofit organization that advocates for and provides support services for the unhoused community in St. Louis. We provide advocacy where we try to make the community in St. Louis aware of the issues surrounding homelessness. And then we also provide direct services. We've got a couple of things going on with that. We do monthly giveaways where we try to make sure that our unhoused neighbors have food, clothing, access to resources. At our monthly giveaways, we had providers there from St. Patrick's Center, from People for Places for People, from America Works, from various organizations that wanted to reach the unhoused community. The other thing that we were able to start doing at our giveaways last summer was COVID testing and COVID education. So we have a pre-med student group from WashU called Heart for the Unhoused, and they come every month and they provide testing, they provide screening, health screening, blood pressure checks, temperature checks, weight checks, and just information and resource sharing about COVID vaccinations, and things like that. So we're kind of hoping when we start this again next month, we're going to be also having vaccinations, not just testing.
Oh, wow.
Our monthly giveaways.
Much needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we serve not just the unhoused community, though. What we found out is that we also serve people who want to serve the unhoused community. What we found is that we are an organization that provides opportunities for people in the St. Louis community who want to help. So even when we think, well, we know that this organization or that company already did a giveaway, or they've already kind of provided services for the unhoused this month, the people that support us, the people that are with us, the people that are part of the Unhoused STL family, they're still contacting us talking about, what can we do? How can we serve? So we are also an organization that provides an opportunity for service as well as serving.
The work you do is nothing short of amazing. I just want to know how you got started with Unhoused STL.
Sure. Well, I am a former journalist. I'm a marketing writer, and what I do is storytelling. That's my niche. That's what I do best. So I've always been interested in supporting and advocating for oppressed and marginalized communities my whole journalism career. The unhoused community was one of those, and I decided that I wanted to humanize the unhoused community. I felt like people were able to stop at the corner of 64 and Grand and not look at a person asking them to help them eat because they didn't see that person as human. I thought, what could I do? What strengths do I have to help solve this? Well, I'm a storyteller. So I started what I called at the beginning, a digital platform it was modeled after Humans of St. Louis, Humans of New York. I originally called it Homeless of St. Louis. And it was a few years ago, probably around 2019. And my idea was to tell these little snippets of stories to let people know that this human being that's standing there that you're ignoring is actually a human being with a story behind their name, their face. And that evolved into people wanting to know more about homeless people. They were like, well, that's great that's that individual story, but how do I help that person? What do we do? Who do we call? Are there organizations? Are there resources? And the more I started answering these questions, the more my social media network start just building. We had a couple of posts that just blew up and went viral, and it told me that there was a huge need for information around the unhoused community in St. Louis. So after we started providing all that information, then people were like, okay, well, now what do we do?
Yeah, how can we help?
Right. So I saw myself as just a digital storyteller, not an activist. As a journalist, I've spent my whole career being trained and told that we stay out of the picture. You know, reporters report stories. We're not part of the story. So I was never really an activist in that sense. My activism always came in sharing information, but not being that person that was on the front line doing things. So I was really hesitant, but people expected it of me. So I think what really got me started was when somebody reached out and said, well, we want to donate some money to you. And I was like, why? You know, I'm like, I got an Instagram page. You know,
they want you to keep the fight going. What do you need? How can we support it?
Exactly. You know, awesome. And I told them that, and they were like, well, what you do is labor. You know, what you're providing now, the information, the research, that's labor in and of itself. And we want to encourage that. So I accepted the donation, and then I started getting people reaching out to me saying they wanted to donate clothing and food and how do they reach people. And I told my boyfriend, I was like, we got to do something.
It's expanding quickly.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I got the social media page, but people are actually expecting me to do something. So in February of 2021, I actually reached out to Andre Cole from Urban City Services and Mama Cat from Pop Bangers. And we decided that we were going to do a Black History Month giveaway. And that was actually our very first, very successful event. And it was successful. We did it as a one-day event, and people brought us so much stuff on that one day. We ended up getting more stuff and giving it away.
Okay.
We're like, we got to do this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then we got to do it again next month. And we have not stopped doing it. Now, Andre is actually has a program called Bounce Back, that he's doing out there in South City now. And Mama Cat, of course, is always doing her thing with Pop Bangers.
Yes. I've definitely heard of both of those companies.
Yeah. So we just said, well, we're going to keep supporting each other and working together. But Unhoused STL started doing their own monthly giveaway every month. So we started out with just a few volunteers. And at our very last one that we had in November, we had over 40 volunteers. We had a group come from Cincinnati, Ohio to grill burgers and hot dogs. And it was called House of Yahweh, I believe. And they were on a Feed the Poor tour.
Oh, wow.
So they just happened to find us on social media.
See,
and they said,
presence.
Can we stop by?
That social media presence.
Yeah, it came by and added a whole new element to our giveaway because we had only been doing snack foods. And then all of a sudden we had hot dogs and hamburgers, and it really became like almost a block party kind of thing.
Yep. Let's cook out at this point.
Yeah. So then December hit, and then we didn't have a giveaway. And we consciously made that decision because December and November, Thanksgiving and Christmas, is the time of the year when communities are going to take care of the unhoused. Yes. There are going to be churches, there are going to be charitable organizations that really step up during the holiday season. So we thought that was our time to take a break. And then when January came, the shelter element came into being with Unhoused STL, and that's the whole third element of what we do. So we have now started running pop-up shelters. We had 3 pop-up shelters in February, one at Bethel Church, which was on the south side of the city, and 2 at Bridge of Hope, which is on the north side of the city.
So how does the pop-up shelters work for anyone that may know someone that could benefit from these services?
Yeah. It's a bunch of people getting together and saying, hey, we got to do something because we don't want people to freeze to death, like literally. So the pop-up shelter that we first started February 1st was a gentleman named Sidwell. His company is Lifeline Mutual Aid, I believe. He secured Bethel Church as a space, talked them into letting us use that space. But because he works full time, he knew he didn't have the resources or the time, so he reached out to me. Unhoused STL is in the privileged position of having donations and volunteers. So we were able to use those resources to actually staff and fund that pop-up shelter that was for 8 days, from February 1st to February 8th. So then we became known in the local the homelessness services provider community as being a group that could do this. So they reached out to us again and they said, well, we might have another facility. Would you be willing to do that? So we did it again at Bridge of Hope. That is a very great nonprofit on the north side of the city that has been kind of quiet, but they actually for years have been providing day services for the unhoused community. So people have been able to go there and get showers and meals every day, Monday through Friday. When we started working with Kelly Braggs over there, that's the executive director, we started talking about them doing the day program and us maybe extending into the night program. So that's something that we're looking into developing further partnership with them. So the shelter aspect, it was a pop-up shelter that literally just popped up on us.
It sounds, like you were just in the right place at the right time. It sounds like everything you've touched thus far has been extremely successful. I want to know a little bit more about some of your struggles.
Sure. Well, we've had a lot of them. I guess the most recent one has been just dealing with the homeless service provider community and how insular and non-inclusive they were. So I did find that as an African-American woman, I had some challenges getting a seat at the table. Despite the fact that I was providing donations and volunteers and resources, I wasn't getting invited to the planning meetings. I was being told what I was going to do after they met. What I will say about this homeless service provider community in St. Louis, once I pointed out to them that they really did have an inclusion problem, that they made me feel excluded, they responded to it. I'm very proud of the St. Louis community because they said, you're right. We do have a issue with not being inclusive. We're so busy focusing on this issue at hand because helping the homeless almost seems to be just one crisis after another, right? So when you're so busy focusing on making sure that people don't freeze to death, making sure that people are eating, sometimes you forget that larger picture that you have a responsibility as an organization, especially since the majority of the homeless people in this city that we serve are African American. The city itself is not majority African American. However, the homelessness population is. So I think it's real important for us as a community to be aware that we have to be inclusive and aware that we are specifically serving an African-American population, along with many other people, but that is the majority of the population.
I know you're not originally from St. Louis, so could you tell us a little bit about what brought you here initially?
Sure. Well, I was raised in Detroit, and journalism brought me here, actually. The Belleville News-Democrat over in Belleville recruited me as a reporter. I was there as a general assignment reporter for a couple of years. Then I did education reporting for a few years, moved on to some other newspapers, and then came back here. So I was here I was at the Belleville News-Democrat from 2002 to 2007, dating myself. And then I came back for a few years in 2011 to like 2013 maybe. And then after my divorce, I came back here to kind of rebuild my life in 2016. It was the place that had been, of all the places that I've lived, with the exception of Detroit, which is home, it was the place that had been most welcoming, most inclusive, where I was able to find my footing, where I was able to be part of a community. It's affordable. There's economic opportunities. So it was the place I came back to, and I'm really glad I did.
Absolutely. We're definitely glad you did. Without you, there would be a missing piece out here in this community. You have tapped into a market that needed you.
Thank you.
And continues to need you. So behalf of myself, someone else whose daily activities, life, works is helping the unhoused as well. I thank you for joining the fight. So I know you stated you moved here in 2002 for journalism. What was your life like prior to Unhoused STL?
I'm a Black woman, honey. It's been a struggle.
Daily.
Okay. I've had a lot of careers. I actually started years ago doing something called word processing. Okay, and I did that at Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and that actually helped finance my journalism degree. So I've been a word processor, an administrative assistant, a customer service rep for 8 years at Blue Cross Blue Shield, getting my degree. Then I got into the journalism field. In 2013, when the St. Louis Post-Dispatch Suburban Journals laid off all of their reporters and photographers, and that was the same year that the CEO got a $3 million bonus. I decided that perhaps the newspaper industry wasn't for me anymore, and I started doing corporate communications and marketing writing. But as far as my service, I've always had my hands in kind of volunteering and providing service for others. In Detroit, I worked with my passion at that time was child abuse and domestic abuse victims, and I did a lot of work with them and senior abuse victims. And much like this population and this passion now, it is something that can burn you out. It is something that year after year, story after story, it can actually impact you personally. So I kind of had to take a break from that. And then that's kind of when I got here, I knew I was going to practice some kind of seva. So I am a Buddhist. And part of our practice is called seva, S-E-V-A, and that is serving others. You cannot be whole without serving others. So this is serving the unhoused population. This work is part of my spiritual practice, actually.
I'm not a Buddhist, but I do believe that same thing. Like everything I do in my life is to be of service to someone else. Every day, even if I'm not at work, I try to find something on the weekends, whatever it is, my time off, to give back in some kind of way. I know you collaborate with the city a little bit, but could you kind of expand on some of the efforts working with the city?
When we talk about struggles, I think that many are struggling to get some of this funding. The COVID relief funding that the federal government is giving all these local entities to do various social service things. And they did earmark for the city of St. Louis 1 point whatever million for homeless services. And that money is available, but it has not really been allocated. And we're trying to figure out how and why. There's funding available for safe havens, which is basically what we did in February. Those pop-up shelters that we did, those were low barrier safe havens. What that means is there were no qualifications. Basically, if you were breathing and you needed somewhere to sleep that night, you could come in.
Absolutely.
We don't have a lot of those for understandable reasons. And part of the federal funding was to provide safe havens. The federal government, I think most public entities realize there's a need for immediate emergency shelter every night for some people. So the city put out a bid for that funding, and they did not award a bid. So, and it is public record, so there wouldn't be any secret, but Bridge of Hope was actually very close to receiving that bid, and there's still a little confusion as to why they didn't get the funding. It's my understanding that they're actually putting out the ARPA funding bidding again this month. So we're hoping that the city will deem some provider eligible for this funding. We know that there are organizations like St. Patrick's Center that's been around forever. They've got the staff, the expertise, the facilities.
Absolutely. We had the same low barrier situation down the street here on Olive. We had the Lincoln Hotel that we were housing many of our individuals that came from the encampment from Camp Cole. We brought them over to Lincoln Hotel under the low barrier. But when we signed up for the ARPA grant, we did not get it as well. So unfortunately, that will be ending.
I won't say nobody knows why the system is still the way it is. Somebody surely knows, but
they aren't telling us.
They're not telling us, and it does not appear that there's anything being done about it. So that is a frustration, when we say, are there problems with the system? I don't think there are problems with the system. I think the system is broken. I think the whole system needs to be redone. Just like we talk about police reform, we talk about public service reform. We're talking about a lot of reform in this country because we recognize that if you work within a broken system, if you start to work within it, that really doesn't work.
It doesn't.
So my hope is, and belief, and I'm still optimistic, that there were old systemic things that were obstacles to our new administration doing new things. I really want to hope and believe that our new administration does want to do something differently, and they are trying to work outside of the confines of that old systemic way of doing things. I'm just going to keep believing it until I don't believe it anymore.
Absolutely.
Instead of the city providing services for its citizens, it's what's happening is that private citizens are providing these services, private donations, not public funding. That's okay, but we as taxpayers told our government we want some of these taxes to be spent this way, and they're not spending them that way. And the burden on private citizens, on private organizations, on private money has been too great. The burnout, and I think that's very important for people to know, we're burned out, especially people that this is their second job. This is not what I do with Unhoused STL. It's not what pays my bills. So it's very difficult. What you've got here in St. Louis is a group of maybe 50, 40 people who are various professions, from journalists to financial analysts to social workers to researchers to many things that have nothing to do with social services.
Just passionate people.
And they're getting off of their 9-to-5s and they're calling and saying, what can we do now? That's not sustainable. It's not the most effective. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the unhoused population, and it doesn't help our community overall. And it has really not been effective, So I'm hoping that our city government will work with us more to try to use public resources that do actually exist.
Yeah, because they're out there. Yeah. They're available.
Right. Yeah. And that's the frustrating part. We know they're there and they're just kind of sitting there right now. We've been told, these things take time, be patient, let's wait. Winter comes every year. It's not a surprise. Summer's coming. It's going to be hot out there. It's not unpredictable. So I'm hoping that there can be some proactive changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All we can do is do our part, and like you said, the burnout comes with frustration. If we were all doing these things, whether it was our job that pays us or just a passion for us, if we were doing it and met with less resistance on a regular basis, it probably would be sustainable for longer. But it's just the frustration of hitting that brick wall, and it's like, I'm just here to help. I'm just asking for a little assistance with me helping. And when you're just hit with every roadblock you can find, I can tell that frustration would be great, and it would be enough for someone again who was doing this as a pastime to just say, you know what, I don't have to do this, But yeah, I definitely, again, thank you for everything you do, because I know it has to be a passion for you to get up and do this day in and day out, even met with all the frustrations that you've been met with. So,
well, it's rewarding. The shelter experience was hugely rewarding because, in my experience, there is no more grateful person than an unhoused person that has shelter that night. we were partying up in those shelters, okay? Because we had some happy people up in there.
Oh, yeah.
They were happy to get off those streets.
Yes.
They were saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. They weren't picky about the food. If it was warm, they were happy. We played cards, we danced, we sang. We were a community. You know, we got people to bring us hair clippers so we could do haircuts and grooming. We were able to pass out clothing. But what I'm doing is not like this thing like, oh, I've got to get up and do this thing for the homeless. Not at all. It's like, I got to go see about my peeps, you know, because they are some cool peeps, like for real. And, you know, I talked to some of my colleagues, like my board member, Charmaine. I have to give some shout outs to Charmaine Wilson, my board member, who was,
hey, Charmaine,
who has a full-time job as a financial analyst and still came and from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. hung out with me at the shelter. And I also have to give a huge shout out to Avital Reznikov, who was my go-to person and basically got this shelter up and running. She's formerly of St. Pat's, knows her stuff, knows the community, is organized as heck. And I got the staffing and the donations together, and she got all the other stuff, all the supplies and all of that stuff. So the other thing that makes it so rewarding and it doesn't make it hard is, unlike your 9 to 5 where you go in and half of those people don't want to be there. You know, it's like, good morning, good morning.
I'm just here.
Right. We want to be here. We're doing this as a voluntary thing, so we're showing up.
Absolutely.
We're like energizing each other. We're motivating and encouraging each other. You know, it's not just a community thing with the unhoused people. It's a community thing with the service providers. You know, the fact that I could go and say, hey, you guys check your racism, and they did. I can share that Winter Outreach is now collectively doing a Witnessing Whiteness course. You know, they have actively decided that, as I shared with them, if you are not intentionally anti-racist, you will be racist. It's the default. So the fact that they cared enough about me as a person, but just the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion to actually do something says so much about us as a family, a community. And I'm proud to be part of this community. So this isn't like, oh, I'm just this, you know, this person that's doing this service thing and it's so hard. And I enjoy this.
I guess I'll get out and do it today.
Yeah, it's not that at all. You know, I'm meeting somebody for lunch. We're going to come up with ideas. We're collaborating. We care. You know, this has just been, it's something that has really enriched my life. When I first started this, one of the things that I didn't like about, and this is no dig, but one of the things I didn't like about organizations that are forced to accept government money is that they're also forced to impose qualifications on people. You have to check all these boxes before you can get food or shelter. Well, St. Louis Winter Outreach, Tent Mission, Unhoused STL, if you're breathing, we're going to help you. And Winter Outreach showed me that model, that it's possible to be on your own, to not have to follow those government rules to provide service to people. And they do a good job. They've kept so many people from freezing to death. And I also love working with Tent Mission because, again, they're private funded and they do the work. Have to talk about Urban Services, Andre Cole, Pop Bangers, Mama Cat. These are all privately funded that are filling in the gaps for the government, quite frankly. We work with unhoused animals, too, at Unhoused STL. We provide dog food and cat food and litter, and we are also providing veterinary services. There is a dog that actually stays at Lincoln right now that we're going to get him some vet services for free.
A lot of our clients come in with emotional support animals, or if they don't have them when they're there, when they leave, they request one. And, you know, I have a few that actually received one once we got them into their housing.
And fear of losing a pet actually keeps a lot of people away from services. I personally have a dog that I love. If I became homeless, I would live in a tent before I'd give her up. Like, seriously, I'm not going to go to a homeless shelter and give up my dog. I already know that about me. So, you know, when people say, well, why don't people want to live in shelters? That's one of the reasons, you know, and that's something we don't talk about. There are understandably barriers to shelters, and it is understandable. Everybody doesn't want to be around a dog. If you were going to have pets in a traditional shelter, you need a separate building, and that gets more expensive. But there are a lot of reasons why traditional shelters don't work for everyone, and having a pet is actually one of them.
Was there any last minute advice, you would give to anyone that is looking to get into, volunteering or helping with Unhoused STL? Like, how can they reach you? How can they join the fight with you?
So we are always accepting volunteers and donations. And our website is www.unhousedstl.org. We also are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Unhoused STL. Go on our website and subscribe. We are going to start doing a newsletter this month because we've got so much to share. So we're kind of doing a reset right now because we are looking into going further into the shelter business perhaps. And we're also going to start picking up on our community giveaways, but they're going to change a little how we do things. So we've just got a whole lot of new things that are coming down the line, but there are going to be so many opportunities for people to volunteer. We're also working with a group called The Bridge, which is this great new place that's going to have a dignified shopping experience for unhoused people, where they're going to have a retail area and they're accepting donations, and I'll have more information about them. But yes, and I'm sure St. Pat's would be able to work with them as well. They'll be accepting donations for used and gently used clothing. And then, so on some days they'll be open for it to be kind of like a vintage clothing shop for people to buy. And then certain days of the week, it will be a dignified shopping experience where unhoused people can come in and shop for free, pick out their own items, So that's, we've just got a lot of things down the hopper. I'll say finally, if I could ask anything of anybody, it's to check your own feelings about how you feel personally about unhoused people. The reason why we as a collective society are not taking care of our unhoused community is because we have made a conscious decision to not care about them. We've got to check our anti-homeless feelings. We've got to stop looking at them as others. Many unhoused people are people that were working every day just like you and me and got a bad economic break.
Absolutely.
They got ill, they lost their jobs, their family member died, life happened to them so hard they couldn't handle it anymore. And they're living outside. They're not other people, they're me and you. And they're not going away.
They're part of our community.
Yes.
We have to help each other,
and we can't expect them to be invisible.
Nope.
And what we're doing now is we're trying to corral them into invisibility. It hasn't worked before, and it's not going to work. So I'd like to ask people to just think about their feelings about unhoused people and talk to people about it. When you're sitting at the dinner table and, a family member talks about those people, remind them that, remember when you were sleeping on grandma's couch for a couple of weeks, you were homeless. We've all been touched by it in some way or will be touched by it, unstable housing. So let's stop being so judgmental. Let's start treating each other with more loving kindness. Let's try to figure out how we can help each other, and let's put pressure on our elected officials to figure out how to help each other.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Ramona, for coming out and giving us your time and words of wisdom and, letting our viewers and listeners know how they can get involved in the fight. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
You're welcome.